going to talk to us about the Keller Hotel and family and Romney, so then maybe after you're done, people might have questions.
You might not. I hope I can answer them.
Okay.
Well, when Carol called me and asked me if I would participate in the history program, I said, well, I'll think about it and let you know, because I thought people who come to the history meeting would know as much history as I do. And then I thought of something. I remembered the Keller Century Hotel, and I thought, I bet there wouldn't be a soul there who would know as much about that as I do. So that will be my subject. And the reason why I think I know something about it, maybe more than you do if you've ever even heard of it, is that my mother lived there. She was born there, and she lived there until she was 14 years old when she went away to school. And then when she was 16, her father sold the business. So she used to tell us, my sister and my brother and me, she would tell us about life in the hotel where she'd grown up. And that's how I had to learn about it. I don't think you can read a whole lot about it. I don't know that there's much written about it. But we've learned about it by word of mouth. Now, she was there because her grandfather had bought the business in 1848. And it was not a new place when he bought it. It was not, the Keller Hotel was not the first hotel in Romney. The first one was the Armstrong Hotel, and he bought this hotel from the Armstrongs, and they called it the Armstrong House. The building itself had been built in the very early 19th century, so it was an old building when the Kellers moved into it, and that's where it came from. And here it is. We'll look at it a little more closely. That's what it looks like, and it's set right across from where she is now. Most of you remember the New Century Hotel, and it's set right where the New Century was, and where the Armstrong House had been there. So that was really a corner of hospitality, because there had always been some kind of place there where people could, some kind of accommodation for travelers. And so that's where it was, and that's where she lived. So I think before we get into the hotel proper, though, we might go to the edge of town and imagine that we're coming into the hotel and see what we find out at the edge of town. And I thought of something out to the east of town that maybe you might not have heard of, and that's the toll gate. Did any of you know anything about the toll gate? You did? You had heard about it?
I heard about it, yeah.
The rest of us have not. The rest of us have not. So
Oh,
yes,
well,
tell us.
anyway, now it was out, according to my mother, the toll gate was out about where the Southern States is, out in that area. And now this picture was taken about 1893. My mother was 3 years old when this picture was taken, and she's in the picture. But anyway, whether they were taking tolls there in 1893, I don't know. I don't know just when they were taking tolls, but there was a toll gate there. And at the time she came along, the toll gate might have been just hanging on its hinges, I don't know. But anyway, I've heard my mother mention it, and I also heard it mentioned by someone else, Mary Colson, the woman who lived out that way, and she remembered it, and she identified something as having happened out near the toll gate. And so that's also another place where I heard that. So I think there's no doubt that there had been a toll gate there. So that's where we'll start our trip to the hotel. And as you can imagine what the road is like. Well, I don't think we need to picture that. You can imagine that it was terribly dusty in the summer and very ruddy and muddy. And then any other time, probably, if there'd been any rain. So as that, we would travel over that kind of a road to get to the hotel. And now there's something else I'd like you to notice, and that is this gas light here. You see the gas light? I don't know. I'm thinking it's possible that you might not have known that there were gas lights in Romney at one time. You probably some of you did know that. But anyway, there's a gas light, and so we'll notice that as we approach the building. And gas lights were in use in the early 20th century, I'm sure, and in the late 19th. And so it's in use there. Now, the hotel itself did not have gas lights. People were still going to bed with coal oil lamps. But they did have gas lights around the town several places. Well, now that we've gotten to the hotel itself, we'll have to decide what we're going to do with our horse and what we're going to do with our buggy if we've got one. So we can hook it up outside somewhere, or if we're going to stay for any length of time, we might want to take care of. And if we want any attention given to our own transportation, the man we want to look for is Dan Banks. Now this is Dan Banks right here. You see him there? And he's got one of the horses, not both of them. The hotel has 2 horses, and their names are Fred and Frank. And anyway, we'll see if we can find him to take care of our horse and carriage while we're at the hotel. We might not be able to find him. He might not be there because he has to. He makes 2 trips a day. He takes the stage. The hotel owns a stage and 2 horses. He takes the stage and he goes to the station and he goes twice a day. They have a train coming in the morning and they have a train coming in the afternoon, and that's where Dan goes. And so we'll have to catch him at the right time. Hopefully, we'll do that. Now, one thing we might wonder about before we get into this too much, probably something I forgot to say. Well, I'll bring that up a little bit later. But anyway, we might ask, well, who's coming in on the train? He would bring in the people who were coming in, and then take down to the station the folks that needed to go out. And if you were up in town somewhere, not staying at the hotel, but you needed to ride to the station, you could no doubt get on the stage and go. So that happened twice a day. And who would come in? Who might be coming in on that train who would be interested in the hotel? Well, one person might be Dr. Canfield. Now, he was a dentist. And I don't know where he came from, but he didn't live here because he only stayed here 1 week out of the month. And he stayed at the hotel and had his office right there. And I wish you could have seen the thing he ground people's teeth with. It was in our basement for years, and I went to look for it, and I couldn't find it. Somebody threw it out. But anyway, his office was the thing. And he ran it like you run a sewing machine. He went up and down like that with his foot and makes the drill go around. And it must have been excruciating to go to Dr. Canfield. Well, anyway, Dr. Canfield had a room there. I think Mother said it was number 5. All the rooms were numbered. And he stayed for a week and had all his equipment. He brought most of it in a case. But that grinding machine was there. And then another person that came to the hotel was the local photographer, Mr. Brown. And he came and he had a room there too. So those were 2 that had businesses there. And they had rooms for the business. But the most interesting room to me was the sample room. And the sample room was the room that was used by the salesmen who came in with their cases of samples to show to the local merchants. Then the merchants would come to the sample room in the hotel and pick out what they wanted to sell in their stores. Now, I don't know anything about any of the merchants except one. I do know about one merchant, and her name was Miss Nanny McCarty, that my mother knew when she was a little girl. And Miss Nanny McCarty sold all kinds of things that women use, dress goods and pins and needles and things, ribbons and that kind of thing, but probably hats. And you won't believe this, but her store was in the house where John Childs lives.
I'll be darned.
And she would come to the hotel. Well, now maybe you don't know where he lives. Well, I have to tell you. You go down Bolton Street, and it's on the corner of Bolton Street and Rosemary Lane. right catty corner across from the Presbyterian Church. And as you go down, it's on the right side of the street. And there are windows there. They're boarded up now, but there are windows on this end, well, on the end of that's facing the Presbyterian Church, that look like, that look kind of like it might have been a store or something. They're boarded up now, but you'll notice those windows. And that was a store. And I feel sure that Miss Nanny came up there and looked for things that might be, that she might sell. Well, anyway, those were three of the people that would come up there and carry on business. I think those are the only businesses that I heard. There were people who lived there, kept there. One was Mr. Chapin. He was the teacher of the school for the deaf. And one was Mr. Lemuel Campbell. Mr. Lemuel Campbell is this elderly man right there. And he lived there permanently. His daughter had married one of the pancakes. And he was a widower for that time. And he lived there, and the whole family would often come for meals. So, now...
What's his last name?
Campbell, C-A-M-B-B-E-L-L, Mr. Lemuel Campbell. And we can identify some of the other people too, as we go along. So we'll look at some other things about the hotel. In the first place, it was pretty old when the Kellers moved in there. There wasn't anything very modern about it. And of course, there wasn't anything at that time that was very modern any place. It was about as modern as anything, I guess. Anyway, they had two offices in it where they carried on their business. And I suppose, yes, the hotel went in there very much. But then they had a lovely parlor where people could visit and so on. A dining room that had the pocket doors, and it could be made double, so they could handle groups of different sizes very conveniently and comfortably in there. And then, of course, the kitchen. And now, behind the kitchen was the dairy. And it was attached to the building, to the hotel proper. And then behind that was the ice house. Now, the ice house was taken off the river and put in salt, I mean, not the ice house, but the ice was taken off the river and put down in sawdust in the, well, you've seen ice houses, you know how to do it. And anyway, the ice was put in there, and as it melted, the water drained off of the ice and drained over into the dairy. And in the dairy then, they kept their things cold by having this ice run out of the ice house and through this, I don't know, pipe of some kind, and into this place where they had the dairy products. I don't imagine that would pass a modern day health department. But anyway, that's how they kept things cold, and I guess they were cold enough to suit the people in those days. I don't know. But anyway, that's the way that was. But you've been in old buildings that were on 2 or 3 different levels. You know, you take 2 or 3 steps up to get there, and then 2 or 3 maybe go down this way. Just kind of, that's the way this house was. It just wound around and had one hall leading off another hall, going in all directions. It was, of course, quite a large place, and all the rooms were numbered. I don't know how many people could actually stay there, but apparently quite well enough to house most of the travelers that went by.
Do you remember how many rooms there might have been?
I don't think I ever heard my mother say.
So when you walked in the front door?
You walked in the front door, and I envisioned that you go into a place that was kind of a business sort of place, but a fairly good sized room, and that you'd go in there and sign your name. I wish I'd brought with me some of the registers, because I have a box full of them.
Wow.
But now, if you want to see them, I wouldn't mind showing them to you, but they're just too heavy for me to drag around.
Oh, I should have brought them for you.
Well, they're just too heavy.
Drag them around.
They're too heavy, and I didn't try to bring them, but I have them up in the attic, and I don't go up the attic anymore, but I have 2 of them that are downstairs. Anyway, if you really would want to see them for any reason, I wouldn't mind at all showing them to you. I have a whole trunk full of them. But I have no idea you know, whose names are in there. You might wonder, well, did anybody famous ever stay there? Indeed, I don't know. I never heard my mother say it. But if anybody famous ever came to town, he stayed there, because there wasn't any place else for him to stay. Wasn't any place else for him to stay. And I wonder too, you're probably wondering, well, did any great historical events ever take place? Well, if they ever did, I never heard of them. Well, but, yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you know how many years those registers might entail?
No, I don't. I never got to the bottom of the trunk. But I'll invite you to go to the attic if you want to go sometime. Well, anyway, I don't know of any historical event. And I was wondering about the Civil War. You all look pretty local to me, but most people that move in are very interested in anything and went on about the Civil War. Well, of course, these people living then, the old grown-up people, had lived the Civil War. So it wasn't history to them, it was their lives. But I just know one occurrence that did occur during the Civil War. And it happened with my mother's mother, learned that there was, that the Union soldiers were coming. And she had some jewelry, and she took her jewelry and she hid it in one of the chimneys. And when the Union soldiers did come, they came into the hotel, and I must say the jewelry was coral, and that's not a very sturdy substance. But anyway, she hid the jewelry up in the chimneys, inside the chimney, and they came in and they made a fire.
Oh.
And it burnt the coral. So now my sister has a burnt coral necklace.
Oh.
So anyway, now you might wonder, well, how did she know that the Union soldiers were coming? Well, Mr. Harmison told her. And Mr. Harmison would come running up the street on his horse. You may know about this, Beverly. He would come running up the street on his horse, and he would call out every little bit, "Yankees at the bridge, Yankees at the bridge, Yankees at the bridge," and that's how she knew that they were coming. Now, if they didn't come by way of the bridge, I don't know how they were notified. That's all I ever heard, that she called out Yankees at the bridge, that he called out Yankees at the bridge. And and I'm sure that's how she knew it. There wouldn't, there had to be some way to pass the word around. While I'm on that subject of announcing things, this doesn't have anything to do with hotel, but my mother said that when there was a fire, they notified people by shooting off a gun. I don't know if you ever heard that or not, but that's what she told me.
Was there a certain number of shots?
She didn't say. Oh, there probably was, but I didn't hear, how many shots there were. Well, now we can look a little more closely. We're going to stay a little while. I expect we'll have lunch. And they probably called it dinner and supper, very likely. But anyway, if we're going to stay for lunch, well, we're just not going to run in and just pick up something to eat. After all, it's not McDonald's. You have to wait till the food's prepared. And the cook is Lucy Rolls. And Lucy Rolls, I think, is up here on the top. I think that's Lucy. She's an excellent cook. And we might ask, what did they have to eat? Well, it's more a question of what didn't they have to eat. They certainly didn't have a lot of things that we have today. I'm sure they didn't have hot dogs. Hot dogs came in Coney Island somewhere in the 20th century. They didn't have any hot dogs there in 1890. I doubt that they had hamburgers. They certainly didn't have any pizza. I know they didn't have pizza. That pizza's still very new, but I know they didn't have that. They didn't have ice cream on a stick. A lot of the things we eat, they didn't have there. But you can, and no, none of the Asian food, because there was very little Asian influence in the world in those days. Certainly nobody around here came from Asia, anywhere in Asia. So they wouldn't have had any of those foods of that sort that we eat today. But they would, I'm sure they would have had chicken and dumplings. And they would have had, oh my word, they would have had an endless amount of ham because nobody had ever heard of cholesterol. So, and in addition to that, they had a pig then, so I know they had ham. And he was just a little boy. And so when he fell into it, well, my grandmother took him and washed him and put my Aunt Margaret's dress on him. And he went home in tears of embarrassment.
Oh,
But I can't tell you where the pig pen was. Anyway, they had a pig pen. And I'm sure it was off somewhere, not too close by. But we'll have to wait to be notified for our meal, because you just couldn't wander in and eat. How do you know the meal is going to be served? All right, now here is Ewing Bush. Now Ewing Bush is in charge of the dining room. I'll show you a better picture of Ewing. Here he is. We can pass that around. Oh, you want to take this and pass it around? Now that's Ewing Bush. He was in charge of the dining room because it's too small, you can't sit. And he would let us know when it is time for us to eat. He would come out on the porch, and you can't see this, but he's holding in his hand a triangle. It's an iron thing, about like that, that's right, fairly good size. And he has an iron, kind of an iron, spike. Yeah, that's what it was a spike. He would ring the... No, it didn't ring like that. No, it wasn't like a bell. Well, I've got it at home, but it's heavy. And I just couldn't ring all that stuff. Anyway, he'd hold it by a leather strap and go this way with it. And all up and downtown, you could hear that triangle. Now, he could play a tune on it. So he played a tune. And all the way down the street, you could hear that a meal was on at the Keller Hotel. And so that's the way you knew to come. And of course, the tables wouldn't have been just little square tables for 4 people. They'd have been long tables like these. And Ewing would have had the food on the table. He would put it on the table in dishes. And of course, the tablecloths would have been white tablecloths, cloths, and the napkins would have been cloth. And the laundry, with all the people and all the beds and all the tablecloths and all the napkins, must have been terrible to do. And of course, they had a woman that did the laundry, and her name was Chat. And she washed on a washboard. I don't know how she kept up with the laundry. But anyway, all those things had to be laundered. And their dishes now, oh, and I forgot to tell you, they had a room they called the dish room, and that's where they kept all the dishes. And the dishes were white ironstone. You've seen white ironstone, heavy white ironstone dishes, and that's what they were like. And they kept them in the dish room. Now let's see if there's anything else we need to mention about the dining room and about Ewing Bush. What?
how much did it cost?
Oh, I forgot to say how much it cost. The meals were $1.
Oh,
You know, I think that was pretty expensive.
probably
Yeah.
was.
Don't you think that was pretty high at the time?
Back then.
Seemed cheap enough, but the meals I thought were expensive.
How much were the rooms?
The rooms were $2 a night.
Wow.
Now, if you wanted a fire in your room, my word, it must have been cold. If you wanted a fire in your room, Ike Banks would make the fire. Now, Ike was a handyman, and he just did everything that was needed around the place. So, here's Ike, if you want to pass Ike around. Ike made the fire, and Ike helped in the kitchen. Now, and of course, you keep the fire going in the kitchen, and if you needed your suitcase carried, he would do that for you. He just did everything, like all the odd things like that needed to be done.
What was his last name?
Ike Banks, he was, Dan Banks had the stable and the horses, and Ike was his nephew. And Ike got drunk every Saturday. He got fired every Saturday night, and was there again on Monday morning. It went on for years. But anyway, that's what I want to know. Oh, now, when my mother was small, she wasn't allowed in the dining room at all. I think that's interesting because it's so different from the way a child was raised today. She ate in the kitchen when she was just a little thing. She ate in the kitchen with Maggie Jackson. Now, Maggie Jackson helped Lucy, who was the cook. And Maggie, mother loved Maggie, but Maggie couldn't see very well. And she threw the dish rag in the maple syrup. Oh, she did. I thought that was an awful thing, but anyway. I'm sure that they've probably threw the syrup out. I don't imagine they used it. But anyway, that's their evening meal then would cost $1. And if you wanted to stay all night, why, it would have been $2. And the fire extra would have been 50 cents. And I could make the fire for you. I think that's about all I can think of right now.
Miss Louisa, I missed it. You said, when did your family take over the Keller?
Well, now they bought, Thomas A.V. Keller bought the hotel in 1848.
Oh my goodness.
And he bought it from the Armstrong House. And the building had been built very early 19th century. So it was not a new building.
Now, when did they give it up?
1906.
Why was it torn down?
Oh, it was torn down. Well, it was old. You know, from my description of it, you can tell it was a pretty old sort of building. And I really think that they needed, the people probably needed a better facility than that, a more modern facility. But the 20th century had dawned. There was electricity. People were beginning to, in some places, have electricity and running water and better means of, well, not much better, but a little better means of refrigeration. And my grandfather was a businessman. He operated a hotel to make a living. He probably saw that he was going to have to do a lot of things were going to be very difficult to do because the world had changed. It was a new century, and it was time for a new century hotel. And so he told me he don't do all that. And I'm just assuming, I don't know, my mother never said he didn't want to do it, but I'm assuming that. And now he sold the hotel, I think, to a group of men who wanted to, who had banded together and wanted to build a new hotel here.
He sold it what year?
1906.
Well, it then became the Century Hotel. And the Century Hotel then sold it to the men who built the new Century
Yes,
Hotel.
now the men were, well, it was a group of men. I don't know who had the Century Hotel. I don't know what they did with it after my mother family left there. I just don't know. I suppose she didn't know anymore about it, and she didn't tell me anymore.
I'm interested in bags. Where did he get his booze?
His private,
Where, you say bags got drunk every Saturday night, right?
Ike did.
Who? Ike.
Ike.
Where did he get his booze?
I have no idea.
Did he drink alone? Is he the only drinker in town?
Well, no, I can't tell you.
That's very interesting. Was somebody making whiskey?
I'm sure, yes.
Yeah, that was something that I knew about. Maybe somebody else is making that. I don't know.
That's the greatest thing going on in town.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
They didn't even have an ABC store.
Oh, I'm sure there's many people outside the Ike that drank whiskey. But where he got it, I wouldn't have any idea. And my mother wouldn't have known. She was a child. She would have known that I was drunk, or she would know where he got it.
I remember you were talking about Mrs. Natty McCarty's store. I used to hang around 2-3 nights a week with Miss Mary Pugh when she was alive and lived over top of Ralph Haynes. And Miss Mary was probably more responsible for my history of Romney than most
I bet
books,
she did wrong.
and she had a ledger from the store down here, and they used to live there on the other end of the Rite Aid parking lot where the
Yeah.
Pew Service Exxon used to be, or Esso station used to be. And Miss Mary had a ledger from that store, and when she was a little girl, her mom used to send her down there for spools of thread.
Oh, it was still going with the time she was.
Well, when she was a little girl.
Yeah.
And it said in the ledger, it listed Miss Mary Pew's mother, and then it said, picked up by little Mary. So her name was in that ledger, and she showed that to me. Now, whatever has happened to it since she's moved on and passed away, I don't know. She said she showed me her name in that ledger, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think they sold hats there too.
Oh,
Ladies'
They
hats.
probably did.
Jewelry or something like that. Parties.
You know, I thought that was interesting that so many salesmen came there to the sample room to show what they had to the local merchant, because it tells me there was a good bit of business going on here. You know, it was worthwhile for them to do that. There was stores here that were worth seeing. So, but the only one I ever heard my mother talk about was Miss Nanny McCarty. But that went on for a long time with Mary Pew in here.
Well, she hadn't been born.
Because she would have been much younger than my mother.
Yeah.
I mean, somewhat younger.
She died when she was 100. She had been kind of early.
Miss Louisa, Michael and I went out to visit Ned at his office when we were doing research for the Hampshire history book. And we were writing about the Hampshire Club.
Oh.
And he told us that some of the people who worked at the Keller Hotel would go to the train and pick up people to come to Keller Hotel, but they'd also take them up to the Hampshire Club.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't. I wonder why Ned never told me that.
I don't know.
So what is the Hampshire Club?
Oh, the Hampshire Club was where Peterkin Conference Center is now. The main building of Peterkin Conference Center was the Hampshire Club. I think it was owned really by a group of men from Wheeling, wasn't it?
Wheeling and Fairmont,
I
yes.
think it was.
Mhm.
And it was a private club.
Mhm.
And it was operated by, when I knew of it, when I was a child, a lady named Mrs. Turley.
Yeah.
Mom's rated it. It was still going on, you know. I don't know when Peterkin was built, but it's in the late 30s, maybe 1940s, so the Hampshire Club was up there for a long time. And that's.
The original house is still there.
Yes, that's
The Gravett Hall.
the Gravett Hall was the Hampshire Club.
And back then, they couldn't travel very far to go on vacation, you know, before cars and things. So Romney from Fairmont and Wheeling was about as far away as they could get to get into the country, I guess. That's why they came here.
So it was more of a vacationing?
Yeah, it was vacation, hunting and fishing.
Sports and fishing.
They had a bowling alley in the basement.
Did they really?
Huh.
After reading your book this weekend,
Oh,
and,
look.
no, not the whole book, but I did notice that John Blue referenced
The Keller House, and the
Keller
Keller
House.
House or the Keller Hotel, number
twice in
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
writings.
Page 20, page 67. I think.
And I thought, okay, well then we know that we have a primary source to reference. It's interesting that he listed.
Well,
Oh,
my
During the
information
Civil
was
War.
word of mouth. I just got it from my mother. I didn't look up anything.
What do you know about the Parker Hotel? You remember that? The
Oh,
other
I
one right
remember
here?
that, yes, I remember it very well. But I don't know anything about
Yeah,
that.
but it was right here on this.
It was on the corner of, it was right where the Rite Aid drugstore
Yeah,
is, right on that corner.
Yeah, I can remember it as a little boy, but
Oh, it was still there when you were there?
yeah, in the early 50s.
It's still there.
It was, now, whether it was functioning as a hotel or not,
Oh, it had to
I
go, I'm
don't
sure
know,
it
but
wasn't.
I can remember the facade was right along the sidewalk.
Now, you know, many of these places are on the Historic Hampshire website. The Parker Hotel is there with some parade going by in front of it, fire engines and stuff.
Yes.
And the Keller Hotel is shown on the Sanborn fire maps. So you can see, it was a very long building. We can just see it on the left side of that photograph going back. But the Sanborn fire maps also show the outbuildings behind it. So you get a good idea of really how big it was, how much was there.
It was big, I think, and very roundly.
So when was the A&P store built? There where the right area is now?
Well, that had to be early,
The antique.
late 50s, early 60s?
Early 60s.
Because the A&P used to be right here where the
Pulmonary.
Hackley's, I think they used to call it when I was a little boy.
Yes,
Hackett
Yeah.
store was there too.
Hackley store, yeah.
Mr. Rumscott had Hackett
Yeah, but
store.
C&P was on the lot where Rite Aid.
yes.
But that wasn't the first place. Oh,
No.
the first A&P that I remember was down in here somewhere. But that building that's there on the corner now wasn't there. It was, all those buildings there were burned one night. So but the A&P had been in that general area.
There's so much going on.
Did you want to ask a question?
I was just going to ask you, can you describe Main Street from your earliest memories? What were the businesses on Main Street from your memory?
Well, now let's see. The Bank of Romney was up on the corner, on the, as you come down this way, it would be on, well, you all on the building now. It's the Cookwood building, that's where the Bank of Romney was.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the Bank of Romney, over on the other side, the new Bank of Romney really hasn't been there too terribly long, maybe
Crash shop.
30 years, I don't know.
The
25.
Workman Building and
Oh,
stuff.
that was over on the other side of the street, the Workman Building. Well, we'll take the other side of the street, let's go down that side. I'll tell you what I can remember, and you all probably can remember this, a lot of you. We'll start up where the Keller Hotel, we'll start with the New Century, because that's what I first remember. Of course, I don't remember anything about the Keller Hotel. The New Century, and then across the street was the Brady House. And it's set back a little bit behind the street, and in front, Bob Brady had his gas pumps. It was Bob Brady's filling station. And there were gas pumps there, and old places for men to sit, and men just sat there and visit with each other all the time. But they did sell gas. And then next to that, the Brady House, I believe, was Hills.
Workman
Sue Brady
Building.
had a little shop in later years.
Crap
In
shop.
later years, she did, but now, in my earliest recollection, Bob Brady lived there.
They lived in that.
I don't know where Miss Sue lived, but she was always getting after Bob about something, because he was just kind of, he was kind of messy, and she was very particular.
Wasn't there an old spinning wheel out in front of that place?
I don't remember that.
An old spinning wheel set out in front of that place when she had her little
Yeah,
craft
they were
shop?
there before.
Oh, she had
Way
the
back.
craft shop.
Yeah.
Because Sue Brady had a little shop up by the Kern's house
Yeah.
at one time.
Yes, she did up
Little
there.
brick building that somebody had a hot dog stand in.
Living had sold hot sauce. And then Miss Sue had her Mountaineer handicraft shop. Now let's see, go on down the street, this will take a while, you probably don't want to spend your time listening to this.
We love it. We love it.
When did the Workman Building
Workman
burn?
Building.
Well, I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
Hill's Drug Store was next, and the Scobbs lived up on the second floor of the drugstore.
Is that where the drugstore is?
Yes,
But the Workman Building,
that's next.
between Brady's and the drugstore.
Was it? I believe it was.
63, right?
You're right. Workman Building was next. And you know what that was like, because you've seen pictures of it if you don't remember it. And then the drugstore, and then the driveway into the courthouse. And the courthouse looked then just like it does now, just about. And then across the street, across 28 was the Literary Hall. But now, after the Literary Hall, then the buildings that were there are there now. Oh, where Ralph Haynes has his office, Mrs. Christopher had a 10-cent store. And Dr. Christopher, well, it's the same building that Mary Pugh lived in, I think. Back behind there was Dr. Christopher's veterinary establishment. Mrs. Christopher had the 10-cent store in the front, and Dr. Christopher had the veterinary hospital behind the 10-cent store. And let's see what came next.
Ralph's building. Dornan's Bakery was in there.
Oh, the bakery was wonderful. Oh, the Dornan Bakery? Oh, but the first bakery I remember was the Emmerich.
Yeah.
Oh, they had wonderful food, and they had that bakery there when I was little.
Is that where the Carlton was?
Where?
At the Carlton building or?
No, it was an old building that's been torn down.
Oh.
It was a long building,
Okay.
and they had offices in there. And the bakery was there, and oh, that bakery was wonderful. I was really little when Mother used to go to the bakery. And then on the corner, that building's gone, that big long building there. You remember that, Jane, right?
There were 2 or 3 little buildings all sort of hooked together. Stickney's
Stickney's
Convention.
confectionery,
Now,
yeah.
Stickley's,
Then
I
there was a
think,
little
was,
house right up above where Beverly's aunt had a little store in there at one time.
who's that?
Fritz. Little Fritz.
Oh,
There were just 2 or 3 little, darling little buildings.
Little store.
I mean, they had little mantles and fireplaces in them.
yes, I remember the one where the bakery was. They had, that was just an old house somebody lived in sometime, I think. It had a lovely fireplace in it. And then we came to the Green Palm Restaurant on the corner there, and then across the street from that was Gracie Building. And they had a hardware store there, and it was also an undertaking establishment behind. And then next came the Colonial Hotel, didn't it, Jane, right?
Colonial Hotel next
Oh,
door.
did we forget the Haynes girl's house? The Haynes girl's house, where was that? It was, oh,
We
it
had
had
a
a
bowling alley. We had a bowling alley in that,
What's in there?
in
The Moose Club.
Colonial Hotel.
that's before you get to that part of the,
I don't remember a thing about it.
What's the oldest building on the street besides, of course, we know the Davis House, but is the American Legion one of the oldest?
Oh, on the other side of the street, oh, the American Legion building really is an historical building. That building was built by Haitian soldiers after the Revolutionary War.
I'll be darned.
Oh, wow.
That is, I think, really historical.
somebody better
Was
start
it
working
Dr.
on it.
Yeah.
Reese's house?
I have always heard
Dr.
it.
Kearns?
Yeah, the Kearns house was built by Haitian soldiers. Well, the Haitian soldiers, there were quite a few who settled in Hampshire County.
Lloyd family?
Beg your pardon?
Loy family,
Oh, really?
my ancestors,
Oh, no.
all 3 had some short soldiers.
They were all the descendants of Haitian soldiers. Well, I think there would be several Hampshire County families probably that would be. And so the Haitian soldiers did build that building. Was any of your ancestors?
No, I doubt that, they were all settled out.
Down the other end of it.
Augusta.
Were they paid to fight in the Revolutionary War? Is that where they came
Yes,
to?
Yes.
was that the French and the Germans?
German soldiers.
Germans brought them over.
And they after they got here, they liked us so well, that they became supporters of the American cause and fought on our side. And for that gift of their efforts, why the government gave them land. And one of the places where they got land was in Hampshire County. And when I went away to school, our history professor, my very first day in the history class, that our teacher asked us to say our names and tell where we came from. And I told my name and said that I had come from Romney, West Virginia. And he said, I never hear the name of Romney, West Virginia, that I don't think about the Haitian soldiers. And you know, I didn't know what he was talking about. That's, I didn't know anything about that at that time. But that's the first I heard of it. But that building was built by Haitian soldiers.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Mary Washington. It was just a little woman's college when I was there, now it's a university. It's
Yeah.
grown.
So what was your mother's name?
Her name was Mary Brown Keller.
And what was your grandmother's name?
My grandmother's name was Louisa Elizabeth DeWitt, and she came from Garrett County, Maryland. She had no background whatever for running a hotel, but she came from a farm up in Garrett County. But anyway, she seemed to get along all right there. I never heard that she didn't.
Well, her ancestor wrote the book about
Her mother was Brown, so he wrote that on it.
hunting, the 44 years in the life of a hunter. You've
Oh,
heard
he
that?
shot Browning?
Yes.
Yeah, I read that.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, that's a great, really?
That was her, that was her.
That was
Really?
that's her grandmother.
Yes.
Wow.
Great grandfather, I believe.
That's a
My
book
grandmother,
everybody should read.
great-grandfather.
That's a good one.
Well, maybe you know,
Really?
I didn't know.
goes back a while.
That's still in the frame.
Deep lake.
I don't think so. You go on Amazon, you can buy one, but it's pretty expensive. Yeah, it's all about Garrett County and bear hunting and.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose it's that long, you can still purchase it?
I think you can if you go on Amazon. I think you can.
Oh.
My father was from there, I spent my summers.
So just to be clear, there's a Century Hotel, which was built when? When was
It was
that?
built in 1917, I think.
Well, that's the new Century.
That was the new Century Hotel.
But this just became the Century Hotel after the Keller.
Oh, okay, and the Century Hotel, the one, the picture here,
That is the Keller Century Hotel.
and that's
It was built in the early 19th century. I don't know exactly when. And it belonged to the Armstrong family.
So it was the Armstrong
It
Hotel
was
first.
the Armstrong Hotel
Then-
first.
then the
And
Keller.
Then it was bought by Thomas Keller in 1848.
But they called it the Keller House.
Well, it was called,
Depends.
actually, that seems to be the Keller House when you hear about it. But I think really the proper name was the Keller Century Hotel, and that's how the new century got its name.
That's
Okay.
Right.
around the center of the community.
What you see in that picture is only a little piece of the Keller Hotel.
Oh, well, there was a lot, see the ice house and the dairy and all that.
But there's a long part of the building too. Charlie Hall has it on his website. He just showed me the picture.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
That's
it's
the
really
only
good.
picture I've ever seen.
Stand up and
That's
show
the one my mother had.
It's interesting, there was no sign that identified it as the Keller Hotel.
Oh, there was.
Everybody I guess just knew where it was.
Huh.
Now, was there like a stage stop? Did a stage coach go through?
No, they went to, now, it may have, in 1848, I don't know what they did. But
Okay.
when my mother was there, the stage went to the station.
To the train station?
Yes, it went to the train station.
Now, the train didn't come to town until, what, 1890s,
90s
80s or 90s?
Yeah, 90s.
Yeah.
Well, they had the train coming when my mother was there.
Okay.
She talked about it.
What year was your mother born?
She was born in 1890.